This is the bone-chilling account of a mother named Zakieya Avery, who became convinced that an exorcism was necessary to remove evil spirits from her children. Her twisted beliefs would ultimately lead to a horrific tragedy: the brutal murders of two of her young children in Germantown, Maryland in January 2014. The quiet suburb was shaken when police arrived at a modest two-story townhome to find a gruesome scene involving the attempted exorcism. Inside the home, officers located the lifeless, bloodied bodies of 1-year-old Norel Harris and his 2-year-old sister Zakieya Harris, both stabbed repeatedly. The tiny bodies were lying together on their mother's bed, loosely wrapped in wet blankets that were soaked through with blood. In another bedroom, 5-year-old Tanya Harris was found barely alive, curled up in the fetal position, suffering from multiple critical stab wounds all over her small body. 8-year-old Martello Harris had managed to escape the vicious attack but bore the emotional and physical scars of also being stabbed multiple times by his own mother. 28-year-old Zakieya Avery, the children's mother, was arrested while attempting to flee from the back of the residence. Also present was Avery's close friend, 21-year-old Monica Sanford, who was renting a room in the townhome. Sanford was found injured at the scene and taken into police custody for questioning. Under interrogation, the two women openly admitted to the shocking slayings of Norel and Zakieya, as well as the attacks on Tanya and Martello. They coldly confessed it was part of an attempted exorcism they believed necessary to drive out demons they felt were possessing the children. In the months leading up, Avery and Sanford had formed a disturbing quasi-religious group they referred to as the Demon Assassins. Avery assumed the role of commander in the group, while Sanford was the sergeant. The twisted pair told authorities they considered themselves to be soldiers engaged in spiritual warfare against evil forces. According to their account, on the early morning of January 17, Avery and Sanford began noticing signs that devilish spirits had invaded the children's bodies and turned their eyes pitch black. They described seeing a dark, demonic cloud visibly hanging over the children as the supposed possession took hold. Thinking she was saving her children's mortal souls, Avery first attempted to break the neck of her baby son, 1-year-old Norel. When this failed, she began to furiously strangle the helpless toddler with her bare hands, before finally resorting to grabbing a large kitchen knife and stabbing him repeatedly in a frenzied attack. 2-year-old Zakieya was next, as the crazed women claimed to literally see the evil spirit leap from Norel's dead body directly into his sister. They proceeded to savagely stab the little girl to death in front of her horrified elder siblings, also leaving her lying in a pool of blood that drenched the blankets on the bed. Avery and Sanford then turned their knives on Tanya and Martello, the 5 and 8-year-old. They brutally attacked them as well, critically injuring them in what can only be described as an utterly deranged bloodbath. The brother and sister were left clinging to life, their rooms also dripping with their own blood. After the vicious assaults, Avery and Sanford reportedly took time to wash the children's bodies in the bathtub and neatly wrapped them in blankets. In their warped minds, they believed this would purify their souls to ensure the murdered children could ascend to heaven in the afterlife. The two women were said to have met through a local church called Exorcism Ministries, where Avery's family had been congregants. But the pastor maintained they never spoke of performing exorcisms, nor gave any warning signs of the barbarity to come. Both women were found to have histories of serious mental health issues, however none specifically linked to violence or religious delusions. But in the months leading up to the tragedy, the pair had apparently become consumed by a shared psychosis that led them to form the otherworldly Demon Assassins Alliance. For the family and larger community, the horrific events of that January morning were impossible to comprehend or accept. The children's 90-year-old great-grandmother, Ida Johnson, could only sob, calling them the sweetest, most precious babies whose lives were cut short for no reason at all. The children's father, Martin Luther Harris, was the son of Johnson's own daughter who passed away in 2012. He had separated from Avery and moved to Los Angeles months before the tragedy. Harris rushed back to Maryland to be with Tanya and Martello at the hospital as they physically recovered from their extensive stab wounds. But the deeper emotional wounds may never heal. The family was left struggling to support the survivors while also mourning 2 young lives lost so brutally at the hands of their own mother. Local authorities arrested Avery and Sanford, charging both with multiple counts of first-degree murder and attempted murder. They were ordered to undergo inpatient psychiatric evaluation to assess if they were fit to stand trial. The state's attorney prosecuting the case stated plainly that the callous killings were motivated solely by Avery's twisted personal beliefs that performing an exorcism was necessary no matter how much blood was shed in the process. With 2 children dead and 2 more changed forever, the long search for justice had only begun for this broken family and community. But it seemed that any explanation or punishment would never be enough to make sense of such an incomprehensible act of evil carried out in the name of purifying innocent young souls. The sensational case drew national media attention as more chilling details emerged about Zakieya Avery and Monifa Sanford's joint descent into delusional madness.
And we want to begin this afternoon with an update on a horrific attack in Montgomery County. We have learned that Zakieya Avery of Germantown has been charged with the death of her 2 children, facing 2 counts of first-degree murder and 2 counts of attempted first-degree murder. Kristen Holmes has our update.
Police responded to the 19,000 block of Cherry Bend in Germantown Friday, finding a gruesome scene inside this townhome. 2 toddlers, a 1-year-old boy and a 2-year-old girl were dead, and 2 injured girls, both under 8, had to be rushed to the hospital. It was Thursday night when police first knocked on the door of this townhome, after a neighbor reported a child sitting alone in the car for hours. With no answer at the door, the officers called Child Protective Services.
I see the car open and one coat the kids in the floor.
It is horrible. Very horrible.
Avery is the mother of all 4 children. She was found at the scene unharmed and brought in for questioning. A 21-year-old initially believed to be a victim was also found with minor injuries. She was rushed to the hospital. Sources close to the investigation say her wounds were discovered to be superficial and likely self-inflicted.
Sources say the 21-year-old female was living in the townhome at the time of the attack. She was questioned at the hospital, but police say no charges have been brought at this time. From the newsroom, Kristen Holmes, News Channel 8.
While Avery had reportedly been committed to psychiatric care on more than one occasion, no previous signs of violence were known to authorities or family members. Sanford also had mental health issues leading to suicide attempts, but no forewarning that she was capable of homicidal brutality. Local police and prosecutors faced mounting questions about how something so heinous could have slipped below the radar. But the women had become extremely isolated from family as their demon-hunting obsession intensified in the months leading up to their rampage. According to court records, concerned neighbors had in fact called 911 the evening before the murders took place, regarding one of Avery's children being left unattended in her parked car for 45 minutes.
A child left alone in a car. Later, an accusation of stalking. And then hours later, a bloody knife. These are all new revelations after police released 911 calls tied to the stabbings of 4 children and the deaths of 2 of them. This comes just hours before the children's mother and another woman are scheduled to face a judge for the first time since their arrests. Roz Plater live in Germantown with new developments in this high-profile murder case. Roz?
Allison, 3 days after this tragedy, people are still coming to this memorial site here to offer a prayer, light a candle, and hope that just by being here, they might begin to understand why.
We knew her. We don't know why she did this, Lord.
Longtime family friends are struggling to understand what happened. Vidal Moretto says the children's mother began shutting them out several months ago.
We never thought, this could happen. We thought, she loved her kids.
The tragedy here began unfolding Thursday night when a neighbor noticed a child left alone in a car. While he was reporting it to 911, 2 women confronted him.
You need to back up off me, man. I'm being attacked by 2 females.
Okay, why are they attacking you?
Back up off me, ma'am.
Is there an apartment number associated with that?
That is my business. Sit in the car for an hour is my business.
Then Friday morning, a second neighbor phoned 911 after making a chilling discovery.
In the car outside, there is a knife with the blood.
Zakieya Avery and her friend Monifa Sanford are charged with murdering Avery's 2 youngest children and attempting to murder the older boy and girl. Sources tell ABC7 the two women met recently at a Germantown church that believes in casting out demons through dance and prayer. But the women broke off into a splinter group called the Demon Assassins. And in a bizarre delusion that the children were possessed, they allegedly carried out a bloody exorcism, stabbing the children repeatedly. An act so unimaginable, complete strangers are trying to make sense of it too.
We heard about it and we were just like heartbroken, and we're just like, how could something so tragic happen?
I wish I knew something to do to make this better for these two little children that have survived.
The two surviving children still hospitalized tonight, and the two women are scheduled to make their first court appearance tomorrow afternoon. We are live in Germantown. I'm Ross Plater, ABC7 News.
Officers responded and reported not noticing anything overtly wrong when they knocked on Avery's door and found her home. Since nothing specifically criminal was observed, they filed a notification with Child Protective Services to follow up. Had police been permitted to enter the residence, could they have uncovered warning signs and prevented the impending deaths? Just 10 hours later, a second 911 call came, this time urgently reporting a bloody knife found inside a car outside the home. Responding officers walked into the unimaginable scene that had unfolded overnight.
The car have a door open. The house have the windows open up there. I heard loud noises in the night. I just wake up and I heard like jumping, and I didn't know they have 4 children, so I don't know if the kids are just doing that every day, so I didn't just think anything. But this morning when I just take my kids to school, I saw the knife with blood outside. I see the car with the door open. I see the windows open, so I don't know if something happening there. The knife is still there.
Further investigation revealed that the women's demon fixation led them to initiate a recruitment effort, speaking of their mission to cast out evil spirits from children. They actively sought to enlist other mothers from the community into their cultish group. Several women came forward who described chilling encounters with Avery and Sanford. They described being initially drawn in by talk of correcting behavioral problems in their kids through performing cleansing acts and exorcisms. The pair's proselytizing had expanded rapidly in recent weeks through word of mouth in their tight-knit neighborhood. Local pastor Daryl Jones, whose church the two women attended, expressed dismay that his message could have been so warped to justify heinous violence. Significantly more oversight of fringe religious groups in the community was clearly needed. But the damage was already done for Avery's family. As Zakieya Avery and Monifa Sanford awaited trial confined in a psychiatric facility, troubling personal histories came to light that painted a picture of the events leading to that horrific January night. Avery, a 28-year-old pharmacy technician, had posted openly on social media about struggling through periods of deep depression and mental confusion. She described hearing voices telling her to harm herself and others. She recounted praying every day for the symptoms to go away, and wanting to be there for her children. But Avery's untreated and worsening condition, paired with the influence of Sanford, created a toxic recipe that would turn deadly. Sanford, 21, had battled severe depression since middle school. Her trauma over being bullied led to suicide attempts and institutionalization. After moving in with Avery, family members noticed she stopped taking doctor-prescribed medications. Without proper care, her suicidal urges may have warped into the violent atrocities she would help carry out. Those closest to her described a gentle person who loved animals and children. But irrational forces inside her mind had clearly taken over, aligning with Avery's disconnected beliefs. Also under the media spotlight were unsettling conditions within Avery's home in the months prior. Avery's marriage had ended under disputed circumstances, leading to an acrimonious separation from her husband, Martin Harris. Left as a struggling single mother without financial support or family backing, Avery's untreated mental illness apparently festered. Avery began lashing out unpredictably at those around her, as documented in a string of reports to authorities. Neighbors lodged noise complaints against late-night chanting and strange activity occurring inside the home. A relative of Avery's ex-husband Harris alleged that Avery practiced devil-worshipping, exotic religious rituals and spoke of needing to purify her children by killing them. Why had these and other warning signs gone unheeded? A grim self-fulfilling prophecy was set in motion as red flags were continually discounted due to Avery's socioeconomic and racial status. Her history of psychiatric issues was brushed aside, allowing her psychosis to turn increasingly dark until it was too late. The legal proceedings against Zakieya Avery and Monifa Sanford raised contentious issues regarding competency to stand trial, and who should be held accountable for such unfathomable crimes. Mental health experts hired by the defense gave conflicting evaluations. Some argued the women were legally insane at the time of the murders. Others deemed them mentally competent both during and after the crimes. Prosecutors asserted that the calculated nature of the attacks showed clear intent to kill. The assailants' actions to clean up the scene afterward indicated they understood the wrongfulness of their horrific deeds. But defense attorneys contended that no sane mother could commit such acts against her own children. They must have been in psychotic states, completely detached from reality. The juxtaposition of these warring narratives surrounding mental illness would play out dramatically in court. If ruled clinically insane, the pair could be committed indefinitely to a mental institution rather than face criminal punishment. After months of examinations, Avery was judged incompetent to stand trial due to ongoing delusional thinking. She was transferred to a state psychiatric hospital, where she would undergo additional evaluation for sanity at the time of the murders. Sanford was declared competent following treatment with antipsychotic medication at the detention center. Her legal team pursued a plea deal to avoid trial, but prosecutors were determined to bring a first-degree murder case before a jury. The ultimate outcome remained unknown either way. The debate over what drove these so-called demon assassins would continue long after the legal battles concluded. Had a grossly underfunded mental health care system failed them? Or were they simply evil beings who knowingly destroyed innocent lives? For the surviving children, perhaps the answer didn't match. In late 2015, Monifa Sanford's murder trial began, bringing shocking new details of the chilling crimes to light along with further insights into the two women responsible.
The women accused of killing 2 children and attempting to kill 2 others in a bizarre exorcism appeared in court today.
And our Hank Silverberg was there for the hearing.
Zakieya Avery, the mother of the 4 children, and her friend Monifa Sanford appeared separately on closed-circuit TV in court to hear the charges against them, and Judge Gary Everingham ordered both held in jail until their next court appearance. But the bizarre series of events the prosecutors believe led up to the murders has also resulted in court-ordered psychiatric evaluations of Avery's competency to stand trial.
The pretrial release workers recommended that there be a forensic evaluation of Miss Avery immediately, and we joined in that request.
Sanford's case has been delayed while she changes lawyers, but McCarthy says there's likely to be a psychiatric evaluation there, too.
It was the state's request that she be transferred immediately to Clifton T. Perkins Hospital for us to get an immediate evaluation of her psychiatric condition.
In court, McCarthy laid out a series of bizarre events, telling the judge that the 2 women murdered a 1-year-old girl and a 2-year-old boy they believe were possessed by demons, and then tried to do the same to 2 older children.
Both defendants alleged that the demon leapt from the body of the last child into Miss Avery and then attacked Miss Sanford, who did suffer some fairly substantial injuries herself.
In court, the state's attorney indicated that the 2 women were involved in a church dance group called the Demon Assassins. There were at least 2 other members of that group, but the state's attorney says he does not believe those 2 people are involved in these murders.
We believe that Miss Avery was really, as she stated, that she was the commander of this group.
The defense team for both women did not object to the competency reviews, adding all they want in this case is justice. If eventually convicted, both women could face life in prison. In Rockville, Hank Silverberg, WUSA 9.
Early in the proceedings, Sanford accepted a plea deal and agreed to testify against Avery in exchange for a lighter sentence. She then gave a full, public confession describing their heinous acts. Sanford admitted that on the evening prior, she and Avery had gathered the children and told them they would be going on a journey to see God and angels. They gave the kids a tea laced with sedatives to put them into a deep sleep, Sanford said. This contradicted initial reports that the attacks occurred with no warning. The drugged children were put to bed, where Sanford said Avery soon became convinced demonic spirits had invaded their bodies. Avery began screaming that she saw the kids' eyes turn black and demons inside them, thinking the devil was making them his children instead of hers. Avery then attacked Norel without warning, Sanford recounted. She described Avery later stating the baby's neck was too thick to snap, so she switched to stabbing him as he lay helpless. Sanford admitted to handing Avery the knife and attempting to hold the toddler down during part of the attack. Zakieya was stabbed next, as the woman continued ranting about purifying her children's bodies and souls. Sanford denied stabbing the second child but didn't try to stop it. She also confessed to aiding in the assaults on the older children before they finally fought off and escaped the crazed attackers. Prosecutors contended that regardless of any mental issues, Sanford was well aware her actions were morally and legally wrong. The defense attempted to show that she was essentially Avery's brainwashed pawn during the entire incident. Ultimately, Sanford accepted a plea deal and was sentenced to over 50 years in prison. Attention now shifted to Avery's mental state and securing justice for her slain babies. In early 2017, after years of evaluations and delays, Zakieya Avery finally went on trial for the horrific murders that had stunned the nation. The proceedings reopened still painful wounds for the surviving children and relatives of the victims. In the courtroom gallery sat Avery's ex-husband and father of the 4 kids, along with his relatives who had become their guardians since the tragedy. Counselors were on standby to assist the victim's family and witnesses as gruesome details were recounted before the jury. The story of a mother's shocking betrayal of her own children captivated the public once again. Prosecutors depicted Avery as a broken woman who consciously constructed an evil plan to send her babies to see Jesus. They systematically dismantled defense claims that she was insane or possessed by demons herself when she butchered her children. Psychiatrists testified that Avery appeared mentally stable and lucid in examinations. She understood the criminality of murder and admitted feigning mental illness to avoid consequences, they said. Emails and recordings showed Avery discussing casting out demons from the children as a deliberate cover story. The state painted a portrait of a frustrated, unstable mother who methodically drugged and killed her kids, then callously lied about hearing voices and seeing spirits to build an insanity defense. Had she succeeded in fooling the justice system, they argued, it would have been a gross miscarriage. In response, Avery's attorneys presented evidence of her long psychiatric history showing pronounced psychosis and delusions. Respected experts asserted she was completely detached from reality and unable to grasp the wrongfulness of her actions that night. A life plagued by severe mental illness had culminated in her truly believing she was saving her children. In the end, the jury rejected claims that Avery did not understand the consequences of her acts, finding her guilty of first-degree murder. At the sentencing hearing, they recommended 2 consecutive life sentences without parole for the deaths of her son and daughter. The tragic story of the Germantown exorcism murders provides sobering insights surrounding how mental illness, religion, and the legal system intersect. The sensational case leaves a lingering question: what could have prevented things from spiraling so terribly out of control? Clear warnings existed that went unheeded by those in Zakieya Avery's life. Her untreated mental health conditions were known but minimized for years before her psychosis took its final, dark turn. Greater family support, professional mental health treatment, and community aid could have improved Avery's circumstances as a struggling single mother. Stronger oversight by authorities regarding reports of instability in her home may have lessened risk factors she lived under. Proper crisis response and mental health checks following incidents leading up to the fateful night could have led to life-saving intervention. But the system failed her until her undiagnosed and uncontrolled illness led to destruction, harming innocent children rather than giving Avery herself the help she needed. The hope remains that retelling her story may prevent future tragedies by shining light on changes needed to assist those battling the most severe forms of mental disorders. The complicated role of fringe religious beliefs also comes into focus. Such extremist views can rapidly turn dangerous when adherents exhibit delusional thinking and paranoia. Outreach to steer them toward conventional medical and spiritual care early on is vital. Finally, this case presents complex controversies surrounding the intersection of mental illness and the law. Should those in states of uncontrolled madness face punishment for deeds their minds told them were right? How can courts accurately distinguish true psychosis from deception? Ongoing reforms in the legal system's approach to mental competency and the insanity defense are still unfolding. Zakieya Avery's acts defied simple explanations, but offer cautionary lessons as society continues grappling to prevent such mindless loss of human life. Her victims deserve to have their cut-short lives memorialized as catalysts for positive change. And their needless suffering must not be forgotten.